The silent power of good manners. In a world full of noise, everyone is competing to be heard. People interrupt. They react instantly. They demand attention. And they often confuse confidence with aggression. But the quietest person in the room is sometimes the most powerful. Not because they are trying to dominate everyone around them. Because they have learned how to control themselves. Most people think good manners are simply about being polite. But manners are much more than that. They reveal your level of self-respect. They show how you handle pressure. And they tell people what kind of treatment you are willing to accept. Today, we are going to look at the silent power of good manners, and why your behavior often determines how people see you, trust you, and treat you. The signal of self-worth. How do you treat a waiter? How do you speak to someone who cannot give you anything in return? How do you enter a room? How do you respond when someone disagrees with you? These are not small details. They are signals. Your behavior communicates something about your character long before you explain who you are. A person with self-respect does not need to be the loudest person in the room. They do not need to prove that they are important. Their presence is felt through composure, awareness, and the way they make other people feel. They listen without constantly interrupting. They speak without humiliating others. They show appreciation without treating kindness as weakness. And they can be firm without becoming cruel. That is what real class looks like. Rudeness is often mistaken for strength. But in many situations, rudeness is simply a lack of emotional control. Anyone can raise their voice. Anyone can insult someone when they feel challenged. The harder skill is remaining respectful while still standing your ground. Kindness does not mean that you are weak. Respect does not mean that you accept everything. It means you are strong enough to choose your response instead of being controlled by your emotions. The power of restraint. Most people react. A mature person responds. That difference can change everything. When someone is disrespectful, your first impulse may be to match their energy. To become louder. Sharper. More aggressive. But reacting immediately gives the other person control over your behavior. Manners create a pause. They give you the space to think before you speak. You can say, I understand that you're frustrated, but I'm not comfortable with the way you're speaking to me. You can say, let's continue this conversation when we can be respectful. Or you can simply leave. That is not submission. That is restraint. You are not allowing another person's lack of control to dictate your character. But staying calm does not mean staying silent forever. Good manners are not about avoiding difficult conversations. They are about having those conversations without losing your dignity. You can set a boundary without insulting someone. You can reject disrespect without becoming disrespectful yourself. You can say no without creating unnecessary drama. And sometimes, the most powerful response is not a perfect sentence. It is your decision to stop participating in a situation that repeatedly violates your boundaries. The architecture of respect. Good manners are also connected to healthy boundaries. When you treat people with respect, you establish the standard for how you want to communicate. But respect must work in both directions. You should not use manners to tolerate manipulation, dishonesty, or abuse. You can be kind and still be selective about who gets access to you. You can be polite and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still decide not to trust them again. This is where many people become confused. They think being a good person means being available to everyone. It does not. A person with class understands the difference between kindness and people-pleasing. Kindness comes from strength. People-pleasing often comes from fear. You do not need to demand respect from everyone you meet. Instead, You demonstrate self-respect through your choices. The way you speak. The way you listen. The way you dress. The way you treat shared spaces. The way you handle disappointment. The way you talk about people who are not in the room. All of these details become part of your reputation. People remember how you made them feel. They remember whether you paid attention. They remember whether you kept your word. They remember whether you stayed composed when things did not go your way. And over time, these small behaviors create something powerful: trust. In dating and relationships, good manners are especially revealing. A person may say all the right things on a first date. But watch how they treat the staff. Watch how they respond to a small inconvenience. Watch whether they listen or constantly turn the conversation back to themselves. Watch whether they respect your boundaries when you say no. Charm can be performed for a short time. Character is revealed through consistency. Manners and attraction. Good manners do not guarantee compatibility. But they often reveal emotional maturity. A person who is attentive, respectful, and considerate is easier to feel safe around. And emotional safety is one of the foundations of genuine attraction. The goal is not to perform good manners in order to manipulate someone into liking you. That is not class. That is strategy. Real manners are consistent even when there is no reward. You show respect not because you want something from someone, but because respect is part of who you are. That is why the way someone behaves towards strangers can tell you more than the way they behave toward you in the beginning. Early dating is often full of effort and impression management. Everyone is trying to show their best side. But pay attention to what happens when the situation becomes inconvenient. That is when character begins to speak more clearly. Final thought. Do not mistake manners for submission. Being calm does not mean being passive. Being polite does not mean accepting poor treatment. And having class does not mean pretending that everything is acceptable. True confidence is the ability to remain respectful while protecting your standards. You do not need to win every argument. You do not need to answer every insult. You do not need to prove your value to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Sometimes, dignity is simply refusing to become someone you do not respect. Level up your behavior, not just your appearance. Build a reputation based on consistency, self-control, and respect. Because true power is not the ability to make everyone else feel small. True power is the ability to stay grounded in a room full of chaos. Train your character. Master your reactions. Set clear boundaries. And let your manners reveal the kind of person you are. Stay with Dating Club. We do not just teach you how to date. We teach you how to understand behavior, protect your peace, and build relationships based on respect. In the next video, we will talk about how to spot a flatterer, and why excessive praise is not always a sign of genuine admiration.